Welcome, curious souls. To Grave Vale echoes your portal to the world's most chilling mysteries and untold stories. Join us as we uncover the strange, the supernatural, and the truly unexplained. Deep within North America's shadowed wilderness, ancient whispers tell of a colossal, bipedal creature. For centuries, a primeval presence has silently observed from the impenetrable depths, leaving only enigma in its wake. This is the legend of Sasquatch. The deep, hushed forests of North America hold secrets far older than any written history. Before the first European foot ever pressed onto this soil, before maps marked territories, whispers moved through the trees. These were not the rustling of leaves or the calls of birds. These were ancient tales, passed down through countless generations by the indigenous peoples who lived intimately with the land. They spoke of a colossal, bipedal creature, a powerful and mysterious presence that dwelled in the untamed wilderness. This was not a new monster conjured from campfire stories. It was a known, respected, and sometimes feared entity, woven into the very fabric of their world. For the various tribes scattered across the vast continent, this creature had many names, each echoing its formidable nature. To some, it was the hairy man, a descriptive and straightforward label for its shaggy, ape-like appearance. Others called it the giant, acknowledging its immense size and strength. The wild man of the woods spoke to its untamed nature, a being that remained forever outside the bounds of human civilization, living deep within the primeval forests. The Nootka of the Pacific Northwest told of the box, a forest giant known for its elusive nature. The Kwakiutl described a similar being called Zunaqua, sometimes a terrifying child stealer, sometimes a source of wealth, but always a powerful, supernatural force of the wild. Even further inland, some tribes spoke of stick Indians, beings that mimicked human sounds and movements, luring people deeper into the woods. A chilling game of cat and mouse played in the shadows. The diverse names and tales only underscored a singular, chilling truth: something massive, intelligent, and profoundly mysterious shared their ancestral lands. These indigenous narratives were not mere flights of fancy. They were often practical warnings, steeped in an understanding of the dangers and wonders of the wild. Children were told not to wander too deep, lest the hairy man take them. Hunters learned to recognize the signs of its presence: broken branches at impossible heights, strange arrangements of stones, or an unnerving silence that descended over the forest. These were not just superstitions. They were a collective wisdom, a shared memory of encounters that shaped their respect for the unseen forces of nature. The creature was often depicted as physically imposing, covered in thick fur, with a strong, muscled build, and possessing eyes that held an ancient, knowing intelligence. It moved through the dense undergrowth with a silent grace that belied its size. A ghost in the shadows, rarely seen, but always felt. The narratives also contained a deeper complexity. While capable of frightening acts, the creature wasn't always portrayed as purely malevolent. Sometimes, it was seen as a guardian of the forest, punishing those who disrespected the land. Other times, it was a solitary, melancholic being, observing human activities from a distance, a reclusive relic of an earlier time. But always, there was an element of the profound unknown, a recognition that this being existed beyond human comprehension, a powerful force that commanded respect. The stories were often laced with a palpable sense of unease, a reminder that humans were not the undisputed masters of the natural world, that there were other, older inhabitants who held their own dominion. These ancient echoes resonated through generations, shaping beliefs and behaviors, instilling a healthy fear and a profound reverence for the mysteries that lay just beyond the edge of their villages. The forest held its breath, and in that breath, one could almost hear the deep, guttural calls of something vast and unseen. Then came the new arrivals, the European settlers, pushing westward across the vast North American continent, brought with them a different worldview, armed with axes, plows, and a fervent belief in conquering the wilderness. They saw the forests as resources to be exploited, land to be tamed. Initially, any strange occurrences in the unfamiliar, sprawling wilderness were attributed to known animals. A large, indistinct shadow in the twilight must be a bear, a strange cry from the deep woods, a wolf, or perhaps some unknown bird. Their practical minds sought rational explanations, clinging to the familiar in a landscape that was anything but. But the wilderness had its own way of unsettling these newcomers. As they ventured deeper, felling trees and building their isolated cabins, things began to happen that defied easy explanation. Trappers, venturing into remote valleys, would stumble upon footprints unlike anything they had ever seen. These were massive imprints, often twice the size of a man's foot, clearly bipedal, and sometimes with dermal ridges visible in the soft earth. They were too large for any known bear, too human-like for any other animal. The sheer size alone was chilling, suggesting a creature of unimaginable weight and power. Imagine finding such a track, far from any human settlement, deep in a forest where only your own footsteps should be. The initial bewilderment would quickly curdle into a cold, creeping dread. Lumberjacks, working in isolated camps, began to report unsettling sounds echoing through the trees. Not the howl of a wolf, nor the growl of a bear, but deep, guttural cries, sometimes mimicking human speech in a distorted, horrifying way, or producing ear-splitting screams that seemed to rip through the very fabric of the forest. These were sounds that spoke of an ancient, powerful larynx, a primeval voice that sent shivers down the spine. Imagine standing alone, axe in hand, the rhythmic thud of work abruptly silenced by an unearthly shriek that seems to emanate from all around you, from the very air itself. The forest, once a resource, now felt like a living, breathing entity, one that held secrets it wasn't keen to share. Farmers, pushing their homesteads further into the wild, would find their cabins subjected to strange harassments. Rocks, sometimes incredibly large, would be thrown against the walls in the dead of night, accompanied by heavy thumps and the sound of massive bodies moving just beyond the periphery of their vision. Fences were torn down with impossible strength. Small livestock sometimes disappeared without a trace, and the lingering, musky smell of an unknown animal would sometimes permeate the air. These were not the acts of common predators. These were deliberate, unsettling intrusions, designed to instill fear and assert a hidden presence. The feeling of being watched, of being just beyond the reach of an unseen force, became a constant companion for those living on the edges of civilization. These settlers, hardy and self-reliant as they were, found themselves grappling with an unexplainable terror. They were pragmatic people, but faced with evidence that defied their understanding. Their certainty began to crack. They spoke in hushed tones around their campfires, sharing tales of these strange tracks, the unearthly cries, the massive, shadowy figures glimpsed darting between trees. The wilderness, which they had come to conquer, was now asserting its own, terrifying dominion. Attempts to report these encounters to authorities or educated city folk were often met with skepticism, ridicule, or dismissive explanations of overactive imaginations or misidentified bears. This left the frontiersmen feeling even more isolated, forced to contend with their terrifying experiences alone, their fears dismissed by those who had never truly faced the unyielding, mysterious power of the deep woods. The accumulated incidents, the shared fear, began to coalesce into an unspoken understanding. There was something else out there, something vast and powerful, something that knew them, even if they couldn't grasp it. As the 20th century dawned, bringing with it an era of increased exploration, communication, and a burgeoning interest in the unknown, these fragmented, localized legends began to find a unifying voice. It was in the remote, rugged lands of British Columbia, Canada, that the term Sasquatch began its journey from local folklore to a globally recognized phenomenon. The word itself is rooted in the Halkomelem language, specifically from the Sask-ETS or Sasquatch, spoken by the Sto Lo people, meaning wild man or hairy man. For centuries, this indigenous group had their own rich oral traditions concerning these forest giants, recognizing them as an undeniable, if elusive, part of their environment. It was a local schoolteacher, J. W. Burns, who became instrumental in catapulting this regional term into wider consciousness. Living among the Sto Lo people in the Chehalis Valley during the 1920s and 30s, Burns meticulously collected and documented their captivating stories of the Sasquatch. He understood the profound significance of these tales, not just as folklore, but as accounts of a very real, very powerful entity that held sway over the deepest parts of the wilderness. Through a series of newspaper articles published in the local Harrison Hot Springs paper and other publications, Burns began to share these indigenous narratives with a broader, non-indigenous audience. He consciously chose to use the anglicized version of the Halkomelem word, Sasquatch. This single act was transformative. Before Burns, settler accounts were often isolated incidents of wild men, apes, or simply something strange. There was no common nomenclature to link these disparate experiences. By providing a distinct, evocative name, Sasquatch, Burns offered a linguistic anchor for a multitude of unexplained phenomena. Suddenly, a trapper in Oregon hearing an unearthly scream, a prospector in Washington finding colossal footprints, and a logging crew in British Columbia glimpsing a massive, hairy figure could connect their terrifying experiences. "Did you hear about the Sasquatch?" became a shared query, bridging geographical divides and fostering a collective awareness of an elusive forest dweller. The popularization of Sasquatch had a profound impact on the narrative surrounding these creatures. It elevated the tales from mere local legends to a named phenomenon, a specific cryptid that could be discussed, debated, and even hunted for. While the name gave it a tangible identity, it did little to demystify the creature itself. In fact, by giving it a name, it made its elusiveness even more unsettling. How could something so large, with such a distinct name, remain so utterly hidden? The media, even in its nascent forms, seized upon these intriguing stories, further amplifying the mystery and feeding a growing public fascination. The birth of Sasquatch in the popular lexicon marked a significant turning point. It transformed the ancient echoes and settler fears into a coherent narrative, allowing a fragmented collection of sightings and experiences to become a unified legend. People began to actively look for Sasquatch, to search for its footprints, to listen for its calls, armed with a new vocabulary to describe what they encountered. Yet, despite the name, despite the growing number of reported sightings, the creature remained a phantom, a whisper on the wind, a colossal shadow forever just beyond the reach of definitive proof. The mystery only deepened, shrouded now not just in ancient folklore, but in the frustrating absence of hard evidence, ensuring its continued reign as the ultimate enigma of the North American wilderness. The deep forest holds many secrets, but few are as chillingly consistent as the unmistakable imprints left behind by something vast and unknown. For decades, hunters, hikers, and researchers alike have stumbled upon tracks in the remote wilderness that defy all conventional explanation. These aren't the familiar paw prints of bears or the hoof marks of deer. These are colossal, bipedal footfalls, etched into the soft earth, mud, or snow. Speaking of a creature of immense power and weight, they are, for many, the most compelling physical evidence that something truly extraordinary roams the hidden corners of our world. The sheer size of these prints is often the first thing to shock an observer. While human footprints typically range from 8 to 12 inches, these mysterious imprints consistently measure a staggering 14 to 24 inches or even more in length. They are also significantly wider than a human foot, sometimes spanning 7 to 10 inches across the ball of the foot, giving them a broad, powerful appearance. This massive scale immediately rules out any known animal in North America, as no bear, wolf, or feline leaves a print of this magnitude or shape. The depth of these impressions also tells a story. In soft, pliable soil, they are often pressed down several inches, indicating a creature of incredible weight, far exceeding that of an average human or even a large grizzly bear. It suggests an animal that could easily weigh hundreds, perhaps even over 1,000 pounds, moving with purposeful strides. What makes these tracks even more compelling is their distinctly bipedal nature. They show a clear left-right pattern, consistent with a creature walking on two legs, just like a human. This eliminates the possibility of quadrupeds, as their prints would show a distinct four-limbed pattern. Furthermore, many of these tracks exhibit features remarkably similar to human foot anatomy. They often display a distinct heel strike, a midfoot arch, and clear toe-off, indicating a complex gait that functions exactly as a human foot does. But on a vastly larger scale, researchers have carefully studied these patterns, noting how the weight appears to be distributed, suggesting a flexible midfoot and a powerful push-off from the toes, features that contribute to efficient bipedal locomotion. Perhaps the most astonishing and difficult-to-fake detail found in some of the most compelling casts are the dermal ridges. These are the equivalent of fingerprints or toe prints, the intricate patterns of skin unique to primates. While difficult to capture perfectly in every impression, several high-quality casts clearly show these minute. Individual ridge patterns on the sole of the foot and even the toes. This detail is incredibly significant because it strongly suggests a biological origin, not a manufactured hoax. Creating a fake footprint of this size is one thing, but replicating complex, individual dermal ridge patterns, especially consistent ones across multiple prints, would be an almost impossible feat of deception. Such evidence elevates these tracks from mere curiosities to potentially groundbreaking scientific clues. The consistency of these prints across vastly different geographical locations further deepens the mystery. From the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, down through the mountainous regions of California, and even into the more eastern woodlands of the continent, the general characteristics remain remarkably similar. The size, shape, bipedal gait, and even the occasional presence of dermal ridges seem to follow a consistent pattern, suggesting that if these are indeed made by an unknown animal, it belongs to a single, widespread species. This consistency across thousands of miles and decades of reports is not easily dismissed as isolated hoaxes or misidentifications. Points to a recurring, verifiable phenomenon, a hidden presence that spans vast stretches of uninhabited land. Moreover, these tracks are not typically found on easily accessible trails or near populated areas. They are almost invariably discovered deep within wilderness areas, in rugged, often inhospitable terrain where few humans venture. They appear in places that would be challenging for even the most experienced outdoorsman to navigate, often far from roads or known paths, adding another layer of authenticity. Who would go to such lengths, hiking for miles into treacherous territory, just to plant a fake footprint? The remoteness of these discoveries reinforces the idea that these are the movements of a creature that actively avoids human contact, preferring the solitude and protection of the deepest woods. The cumulative weight of these observations, the immense size, the bipedal nature, the human-like anatomy, the dermal ridges, and the consistent findings in remote areas builds a compelling, albeit unsettling, case for the physical existence of something truly extraordinary. While footprints provide silent, undeniable clues, it is the eyewitness accounts that truly bring the mystery of Sasquatch to life, painting a terrifying picture of first-hand encounters that scar the memory. These aren't reports from panicked urban dwellers lost in the woods. Often, they come from seasoned outdoorsman hunters who know every animal track, loggers who have spent decades felling trees, park rangers intimately familiar with the local wildlife, and even law enforcement officers who are trained observers. These are individuals who are not easily fooled by shadows or misidentified animals. Yet they describe something that utterly defies their understanding of the natural world. The typical encounter often begins with a subtle shift in the forest's atmosphere, an unusual silence, a sudden, inexplicable feeling of being watched, or an unexpected smell sometimes described as musky, foul, or like wet dog. Then, the impossible happens. A massive, bipedal figure emerges from the dense undergrowth, sometimes just for a fleeting moment, sometimes pausing to observe. Descriptions consistently point to an immense stature, often cited as between 7 to 10 feet tall, with a broad, powerfully muscled physique that suggests incredible strength. The body is almost always covered in thick, dark hair or fur, ranging from black to dark brown, sometimes reddish-brown, seamlessly blending with the shadows of the forest. The sheer scale of the creature is often the most overwhelming aspect, dwarfing even the largest bears and making a human feel utterly insignificant. The facial features, though often glimpsed only briefly, are frequently described with chilling consistency. Deep-set eyes, sometimes appearing dark and intelligent, other times wide and apprehensive, are a common detail. The brow ridge is often prominent, giving the face a somewhat ape-like or Neanderthal quality. Noses are often described as flat or wide, and mouths are sometimes reported as wide or downturned. The neck, if visible, appears short and thick, connecting a heavy head directly to massive shoulders. The arms are often said to be long and powerful, sometimes swinging freely at its sides, similar to a human, but with an intimidating, raw power. Witnesses speak of its movement as surprisingly fluid and silent for such a large creature, gliding through dense vegetation with an eerie grace, sometimes disappearing as quickly and silently as it appeared. The sounds accompanying these encounters are equally terrifying. Sometimes, the creature moves in absolute silence, a ghost in the forest, its presence felt more than heard. Other times, it lets out guttural growls, ear-splitting screams, or a series of distinctive whoops or howls that are unlike any known animal. These vocalizations are often described as resonating deep in the chest, carrying for miles, and designed to inspire primal fear. Imagine standing alone, deep in the wilderness, and hearing a scream so raw and powerful that it rattles your very bones. A sound that speaks of an ancient, untamed fury. Such experiences are not easily forgotten. The immediate reaction of witnesses is almost universally one of profound terror. Many describe feeling a primal, overwhelming fear that completely overrides logical thought. People report being frozen in place, unable to move, scream, or even think clearly. The sheer shock of seeing something that should not exist can induce a state of paralysis, a fight-or-flight response utterly overwhelmed by the impossibility of the situation. This isn't just surprise. It's a deep-seated dread that comes from facing a creature that seems to defy the very laws of nature. A monster from ancient nightmares suddenly made real. The fleeting nature of most sightings, a few seconds, perhaps a minute at most, does not diminish their impact. In fact, the brief, intense flash of the unknown often makes the experience even more haunting. The memory becomes indelibly seared into their minds, a terrifying secret carried for life. The psychological impact of these encounters goes far beyond the immediate moment of terror. For those who claim to have seen a Sasquatch, life in the wilderness, and sometimes even in everyday settings, is irrevocably altered. The initial shock gives way to a profound and unsettling disbelief, even within the witness themselves. Did I truly see that? Is a common internal struggle. They try to rationalize it, to dismiss it as a bear standing upright, a trick of the light, or an overactive imagination. But the memory, raw and visceral, stubbornly refuses to be explained away. The distinct features, the immense size, the bipedal movement, it all points to something entirely different, something unknown. This internal struggle to reconcile the impossible sighting with their known reality can be deeply isolating. They grapple with a newfound understanding of the world, One where the official narratives of science and nature are incomplete, where something terrifyingly real exists just beyond the edges of accepted knowledge. This realization often brings with it an overwhelming sense of dread. The wilderness, once a place of solace or adventure, becomes imbued with a new, menacing quality. Every rustle in the leaves, every distant sound, every shadow in the trees is now scrutinized, filtered through the lens of their terrifying encounter. The feeling of being watched, of a massive, unseen intelligence lurking just out of sight, becomes a persistent and gnawing paranoia, especially when they venture back into forested areas. The long-term effects can be profound. Many witnesses report suffering from nightmares, reliving the moment of terror over and over. They might become more cautious, perhaps carrying a weapon when they previously wouldn't, or actively avoiding certain remote areas where their encounter took place. Some experience a deep-seated fear of the dark, or a heightened sensitivity to sounds in the night. This isn't just about a brief fright. It's about a fundamental shift in their perception of safety and the natural world. They have glimpsed a hidden layer of existence, and it has left them feeling profoundly vulnerable and insignificant. Adding to the psychological burden is the social stigma. The choice to come forward with a Sasquatch sighting is often met with ridicule, skepticism, or outright dismissal from friends, family, and the wider community. People fear being labeled as crazy, prone to exaggeration, or simply unreliable. This fear of judgment often leads witnesses to suffer in silence, carrying their terrifying secret alone. They are forced to internalize their experience, unable to share the burden of what they have seen, which only intensifies the feeling of isolation and the lingering fear. The dismissal of their experience by others can make them question their own sanity, even when their own senses tell them the event was undeniably real. Despite the disbelief and ridicule, for many, the encounter hardens into a quiet conviction. They may not shout it from the rooftops, but deep down, they know what they saw. They have faced the impossible, and it has fundamentally changed them. The experience leaves them with a lingering, unsettling question: what is it? Is it a reclusive, unknown ape, a relic of ancient hominid evolution, or something even stranger, something that hints at an even deeper, more complex mystery within the untamed wilds? This unanswered question persists, a chilling echo in the minds of those who have stared into the face of the unknown, ensuring that the stifling silence of the forest is forever pregnant with a new, terrifying meaning. The world of Bigfoot research is often defined by fleeting glimpses and blurry images. Yet one piece of evidence stands head and shoulders above all others, dominating the debate for decades: the Patterson-Gimlin film. Shot in October 1967 by Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin near Bluff Creek, California, this short piece of 16mm footage purports to show a large, bipedal, ape-like creature walking through a sandy creek bed. Despite its brevity, the film has become the cornerstone of Bigfoot discussions, simultaneously offering the most compelling visual evidence and fueling an enduring, passionate controversy. The story behind the film begins with Roger Patterson, a rodeo cowboy and amateur Bigfoot enthusiast, who had been researching the creature for years. He, along with his friend Robert Gimlin, ventured into the remote Bluff Creek area, a known hotspot for Bigfoot sightings and track finds since the 1950s. They were specifically searching for evidence of the elusive creature. On the afternoon of October 20th, 1967, while riding horseback, they reportedly came across a large, hairy bipedal creature near a bend in the creek. Patterson's horse reared, throwing him to the ground, but he quickly recovered, grabbed his 16mm camera, and began filming. Gimlin, remaining on his horse, watched the creature, ensuring Patterson's safety. The resulting film, lasting just 59 seconds, captures what appears to be a large, female Sasquatch walking away from the camera, looking back over its shoulder once, and then disappearing into the dense forest. The creature, affectionately dubbed Patty by enthusiasts, is covered in dark, reddish-brown hair, estimated to be between 7 and 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a powerful build. Its most striking feature, beyond its sheer size, is its distinctive gait. The creature walks with a noticeable mid-tarsal break, a flexibility in the middle of its foot that allows for a rolling motion from heel to toe, and a powerful, almost swaying stride. This particular gait has been a central point of analysis and contention, as it is markedly different from a typical human walk, and difficult to convincingly replicate. Upon its release, the Patterson-Gimlin film immediately ignited a firestorm of debate. Bigfoot proponents hailed it as definitive proof, a clear and unambiguous visual record of the creature's existence. They pointed to the creature's size, its unusual gait, its musculature, and the apparent absence of visible seams or zippers on what would have to be an incredibly sophisticated ape suit. To them, the sheer impossibility of faking such a convincing display, particularly in 1967 with limited special effects technology, lent immense credibility to the footage. The weight and power conveyed by the creature's movement, the way its muscles visibly flexed, and the apparent genuine reaction of Patterson in grabbing his camera, all seemed to argue for its authenticity. However, almost immediately, skeptics and a significant portion of the scientific community dismissed the film as a hoax. Their arguments centered on several key points. Firstly, the creature is always moving away from the camera, never directly facing it, which they argued was a convenient way to hide a mask or costume. Secondly, the quality of the film, while reasonable for 1967, was not crystal clear, leaving room for interpretation and doubt regarding finer details. Thirdly, the idea of a large, unknown primate existing undetected in North America was, and remains, a radical concept for mainstream science, requiring extraordinary proof to overcome established biological knowledge. The film, for many scientists, simply didn't provide that definitive, unassailable evidence. Over the decades, the Patterson-Gimlin film has been subjected to intense scrutiny by a diverse range of experts: anthropologists, primatologists, special effects artists, film analysts, and even computer animators have pored over every frame, searching for clues to its authenticity or fraudulence. Proponents have highlighted details like the creature's muscle movements under the skin, the way its hair appears to hang and sway naturally, and the specific proportions of its limbs, arguing that these are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to achieve with a costume. They point to the apparent weight and inertia of the creature's movements, which they argue would be challenging for a man in a suit to replicate convincingly without visible signs of strain or artificiality. Perhaps the most significant aspect studied has been the creature's gait. Dr. Grover Krantz, a physical anthropologist, spent years analyzing the film, concluding that the mid-tarsal break and the unique foot mechanics demonstrated by Patty were consistent with a large, heavy bipedal hominoid, not a human. He argued that no known human could naturally achieve such a gait, let alone maintain it convincingly while wearing a heavy suit. Conversely, skeptics have commissioned special effects experts to attempt to recreate the costume and the walk, with some claiming success in replicating aspects of the movement. However, these attempts often fall short of capturing the full naturalness and apparent weight of the original film. The debate over the gait alone highlights the complex and often contradictory analyses surrounding this single, short piece of footage. The more it is analyzed, the more polarizing it seems to become, drawing deeper lines between believers and skeptics, each side finding new ways to interpret its fleeting images. Beyond the Patterson-Gimlin film, countless other pieces of photographic and video evidence have surfaced over the decades, further fueling the Bigfoot enigma. These are often far less clear, much shorter, and frequently dismissed as hoaxes, misidentifications, or outright fabrications. Yet, taken as a collective, they form a fascinating tapestry of blurry, fleeting glimpses that, for believers, strengthen the cumulative case for a hidden primate. One common thread among these additional visuals is their bling-can-you'll-miss-it quality. They rarely offer the sustained, relatively clear view of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Instead, they are often mere seconds long, capturing a dark, indistinct shape moving quickly through dense foliage, or a blurry, distant figure partially obscured by trees. Many are taken by chance, by hikers or campers who happen to have a camera or phone ready at the precise moment something unusual appears. This accidental nature, for proponents, lends them a certain authenticity. They aren't staged, but rather genuine reactions to an unexpected phenomenon. For example, there are numerous trail camera photos that have captured what appear to be large, hairy bipedal figures. These cameras, set up to monitor wildlife, are triggered by motion, and occasionally, they capture something that defies the expected local fauna. These images are often grainy, taken at night, or partially obscured by branches, making definitive identification impossible. However, the recurring theme of a tall, dark, human-like shape, often with disproportionately long arms or a massive build, sparks curiosity. Sometimes, these images capture only a partial view, a leg, torso, or a shadowy figure disappearing behind a tree, leaving more questions than answers. Video evidence, while more dynamic, often suffers from similar clarity issues. Many clips show distant figures moving through forests, appearing to walk upright, but the resolution is too low, or the distance too great, to discern clear features. These videos are often accompanied by anecdotal accounts from the filmer, describing how they were startled by the creature, or how it quickly vanished before they could get a better shot. While these clips rarely offer the level of detail seen in the Patterson-Gimlin film, they collectively contribute to the narrative that something large and unknown is indeed moving through the wild. The sheer volume of these fleeting glimpses, while individually unconvincing to skeptics, can For some, create a persistent sense of possibility and intrigue. The critical analysis of these additional images and videos, much like the Patterson-Gimlin film, is a battleground of interpretation. Believers see confirmation, arguing that the consistency of the general shape and movement across different sources, times, and locations points to a real phenomenon. They might emphasize the naturalistic way the subject moves, or the reactions of the videographers, suggesting genuine surprise rather than staged performance. They might point to the difficulty of faking such a wide array of evidence, especially in the context of primitive camera technology during earlier periods. Conversely, skeptics readily dismiss these images as optical illusions, misidentified animals, or outright hoaxes. They argue that the blurriness and low quality are precisely what allows for misinterpretation, and that the human brain is adept at seeing familiar patterns like a human shape in ambiguous data. A bear on its hind legs, a person in dark clothing, or even a tree stump can, in poor lighting or at a distance, be mistaken for a Bigfoot. Furthermore, the internet has made it easier than ever to create and disseminate convincing fakes, adding another layer of doubt to any new photographic or video submission. The lack of clear, unambiguous detail in most of these pieces of evidence means that definitive proof remains elusive, and the debate continues to rage, fueled by tantalizing, yet frustratingly indistinct, visual hints. The scientific and skeptical community often approaches the topic of Bigfoot with a mix of disdain, curiosity, and a demand for undeniable proof. For them, the existence of an unknown, large primate in North America would be a monumental discovery, shaking the foundations of zoology and primatology. However, the bar for such a revolutionary claim is incredibly high, and the existing photographic and video evidence, while intriguing to some, falls far short of what they would consider conclusive. The core of the skeptical argument against the visual evidence is the simple absence of irrefutable, unmanipulated, high-definition footage of a living, breathing Sasquatch. They point out that, in an age of ubiquitous high-resolution cameras on every smartphone, drones, and advanced wildlife monitoring equipment, it is increasingly improbable that such a large creature could remain consistently uncaptured in clear, unambiguous detail. If Bigfoot were real and even remotely common, they argue, surely by now someone would have accidentally filmed it with undeniable clarity. The fact that all evidence remains blurry, distant, or controversial is, for skeptics, a strong indicator that the phenomenon is likely a product of misidentification, folklore, or deliberate deception. Furthermore, skeptics delve into the specifics of alleged hoaxes. They point to individuals who have come forward claiming to have worn ape suits or created fake footprints, sometimes even claiming to be the person in the Patterson-Gimlin film. While these confessions are themselves often controversial and quickly debunked by proponents, they contribute to the narrative that the Bigfoot phenomenon is ripe for trickery. The possibility of hoaxes, they argue, casts a shadow of doubt over all visual evidence, forcing an assumption of fraud until proven otherwise. The history of cryptozoology is replete with faked evidence, from the Piltdown Man to the Fiji mermaid, making skeptics naturally wary of extraordinary claims. The scientific community's perspective is rooted in empirical data. They emphasize the need for a physical specimen, a body, bones, or even unambiguous DNA evidence to confirm the existence of a new species. While footprints or blurry videos are interesting, they are considered insufficient without tangible biological material that can be analyzed and cross-referenced. The lack of a single, verifiable carcass, despite centuries of sightings and tracks, is a major stumbling block for scientists. A creature of that size, they argue, would inevitably die, and its remains would eventually be found. Or at least its population size would be large enough to make clear photographic evidence much more common. However, even among skeptics, there's a certain grudging acknowledgement of the compelling nature of some of the evidence, particularly the Patterson-Gimlin film. While they may offer alternative explanations for specific features, the film's enduring power lies in its ability to defy easy dismissal. Even seasoned special effects artists have expressed difficulty in fully replicating every nuance of Patty's movement with 1960s technology. This lingering doubt, even among the most critical, is what keeps the debate alive. The elusive truth behind the visual evidence remains one of the most intriguing and frustrating aspects of the Bigfoot mystery. For every explanation offered, a new question seems to arise, ensuring that the unblinking eye of the camera, however blurry, continues to captivate and challenge our understanding of the hidden world. The enduring mystery of Bigfoot is not merely a collection of strange stories and blurry photographs. It is a profound biological riddle that haunts the fringes of modern science. If such a creature truly exists, it represents a missing piece in our understanding of evolution. A colossal anomaly that challenges everything we think we know about the Earth's most formidable inhabitants. The very idea of a large, unknown primate roaming North America's vast wilderness forces us to confront the limitations of our current biological map. The most common theory among those who believe in Bigfoot is that it is a relict hominid, a surviving member of an ancient human lineage that science believes has long been extinct. One prominent candidate often cited is Gigantopithecus blacki, an enormous ape that lived in Asia millions of years ago. Known primarily from fossilized teeth and jawbones, it's estimated that Gigantopithecus could have stood up to 10 feet tall and weighed over 1,000 pounds. While current scientific consensus places Gigantopithecus extinction around 100,000 years ago in Asia, proponents suggest that a population could have migrated across the Bering Land Bridge into North America during an ice age, adapting to the new environment and surviving in its remote, untouched forests. The argument here is that dense, unexplored forests could provide ample food and cover for a reclusive population to persist for millennia, evolving into the Sasquatch we hear about today. Such a creature would possess immense strength, intelligence, and an innate ability to avoid human contact, characteristics often described by eyewitnesses. Another biological possibility, albeit less frequently discussed, is that Bigfoot represents an unknown species of great ape, perhaps a distant cousin to gorillas or orangutans, that evolved independently in North America. This would suggest a unique evolutionary branch, a large, bipedal ape perfectly adapted to the varied North American terrain. From the rugged mountains to the dense, temperate rainforests, the bipedal stance, while often associated with hominids, is not exclusive to them. Some apes can walk upright for short distances. However, the consistent bipedal gait described for Sasquatch would imply a highly specialized adaptation for two-legged locomotion, suggesting a significant divergence from known great apes. The sheer size and intelligence attributed to these creatures would require vast territories and a plentiful food supply, pointing to the existence of truly pristine, undisturbed wilderness areas that could support such a population without human interference. The biological riddle is not just if it exists, but what it is, and where it fits into the complex tree of life. Its existence would redefine our understanding of primate evolution and geographic distribution, opening up a Pandora's box of scientific questions about other potential hidden species. The persistent reports, the consistent physical descriptions, and the sheer volume of anecdotal evidence keep this tantalizing biological puzzle firmly in the minds of cryptozoologists and even a few open-minded scientists, forever asking, could a living fossil truly walk among us, just out of sight? In an age defined by technology and an insatiable drive to uncover every last secret of the natural world, the hunt for Bigfoot has evolved beyond simple tracking and anecdotal reports. Modern expeditions, often spearheaded by dedicated researchers and citizen scientists, now employ sophisticated tools and techniques, hoping to capture irrefutable evidence of the Sasquatch. The goal is no longer just to find a footprint, but to definitively prove its existence using methods that stand up to rigorous scientific scrutiny. One of the most valuable tools in this modern quest is thermal imaging. These cameras detect heat signatures, allowing researchers to see in the dark and penetrate dense foliage, where traditional optical cameras might fail. Expeditions venture into known sighting hotspots at night, using high-resolution thermal cameras to scan the tree lines and clearings. The hope is to capture a distinct heat signature of a large, bipedal creature, one that cannot be mistaken for a known animal. Imagine seeing a bright, human-shaped heat outline moving silently through the pitch-black forest, a clear indication of a warm-blooded, upright walking entity that should not be there. While thermal images can be affected by environmental factors, a consistent, unexplainable bipedal heat signature would be a significant breakthrough, offering compelling visual proof without relying on subjective eyewitness accounts. Alongside visual technology, acoustic monitoring has become a crucial element of modern research. Researchers deploy automated sound traps deep in the wilderness, recording ambient forest sounds 24 hours a day. These devices are designed to capture any unusual vocalizations that might be attributed to Sasquatch. The archives of these recordings contain countless hours of forest noise. But occasionally, something truly anomalous emerges. Deep, guttural growls unlike any known bear, powerful wood knocks that suggest immense strength, or the distinct whoops and howls described by countless witnesses. The challenge lies in distinguishing these potential Bigfoot vocalizations from known animal sounds or natural phenomena. However, consistent, inexplicable audio patterns, especially when occurring in conjunction with other evidence, offer another layer of data for analysis, providing a potential voice to the elusive creature. Perhaps the most scientifically promising, yet consistently frustrating, avenue of modern research is DNA analysis. Researchers actively seek out biological samples in known Bigfoot areas, hair strands snagged on branches, scat, feces samples, blood traces, or tissue fragments found on vegetation. These samples are then meticulously collected, handled with extreme care to avoid contamination, and sent to genetic laboratories for analysis. The hope is to find DNA sequences that do not match any known species of animal, plant, or human, pointing instead to a unique, unknown primate, while many samples turn out to be from bears, deer, or other common animals. A handful of reported cases have shown anomalous DNA sequences that defy easy categorization. These preliminary findings are exciting, but always require further replication and scrutiny from the broader scientific community to be accepted as definitive proof. The tantalizing possibility of finding a genetic fingerprint of a new species keeps this meticulous, often tedious, work alive, driven by the chance of finally unlocking the biological secret of the Sasquatch. Each high-tech expedition into the silent, watchful woods represents a renewed effort to pierce the veil of mystery, using every available tool to force the elusive truth into the light. Despite these advanced efforts and the unwavering dedication of researchers, the ultimate, most irrefutable piece of evidence continues to elude capture: a definitive body or skeletal remains. This remains the most significant and frustrating hurdle for the scientific acceptance of Bigfoot. For science to acknowledge a new species, particularly a large primate, a physical specimen is paramount. Without it, all other evidence, footprints, blurry videos, even anomalous DNA remains circumstantial, open to interpretation, and ultimately insufficient to overturn established biological paradigms. The core question that haunts the scientific debate is simple: a creature of such immense size, if it truly exists in numbers sufficient to maintain a breeding population, must die. Animals die from old age, disease, injury, or natural disasters. When they do, their remains are typically left behind, eventually found by humans or scavengers. Yet, for centuries, despite countless reported sightings and tracks, not a single verifiable carcass, skeleton, or even a bone fragment of a Sasquatch has ever been recovered. This absence of a body is a powerful argument for skeptics, who contend that if Bigfoot were real, its remains would have been discovered by now. The lack of remains leads to several theories from believers, each attempting to explain this frustrating absence. Some suggest that Sasquatch are incredibly rare, maintaining extremely small populations that are highly adept at avoiding human detection, even in death. Others hypothesize that these creatures, if they possess advanced intelligence, might bury their dead, mimicking human or Neanderthal-like burial practices to conceal their fallen. This would add another layer of complexity to their intelligence and social structure. But it's a theory without any direct evidence. Another idea is that their bodies might decompose incredibly quickly in the wild, or are rapidly scavenged by other animals, leaving no trace behind. However, even with rapid decomposition or scavenging, some bone fragments or teeth should theoretically remain, especially in diverse geographical locations. This elusive truth, the missing physical proof, is the enduring paradox of the Bigfoot phenomenon. For proponents, it speaks to the creature's incredible intelligence, its unparalleled stealth, and the vastness and mystery of the wilderness itself, a place still capable of holding ancient secrets. For skeptics, it is the ultimate nail in the coffin, the final, undeniable proof that the creature is nothing more than myth and misidentification. The search continues, driven by the tantalizing possibility of discovery, but forever constrained by the frustrating reality that the most critical piece of the puzzle remains hidden. Deep within the shadowed, watchful forests, the enigma persists, a silent challenge to our knowledge, always just beyond our grasp. The wild never yields its deepest secrets. Some shadows simply lengthen with time. The silent watcher persists, forever just beyond our grasp. A chilling echo in the primeval forest. Thank you for daring to delve into the unknown with Grey Veil Echoes. If these whispers from the past captivated you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, keep exploring the shadows.